Hello, everyone. Imagine this. You're waving goodbye to your husband as he boards a plane for a business trip, thinking everything's fine at home. But then your son whispers something that turns your world upside down. What if the place you call home hides a secret that could change everything? Stick around for this incredible story of suspicion, hiding, and a twist you'll never see coming. If you enjoy real-life tales like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now. It really helps us grow. And drop a comment below. Where are you listening from? And has anything similar ever happened in your life? Let's get into it. My name is Emily, and this all started on a crisp autumn morning in our quiet suburban neighborhood just outside Chicago. I'd been married to Tom for 15 years, and we had our son, Jake, who was 12 at the time. Tom worked as a sales manager for a tech company, which meant he traveled a lot. Conferences, client meetings, you name it. I was used to it by then. I'd wave him off at the airport, handle things at home, and wait for his return with stories from whatever city he'd been to. That day seemed no different. We'd driven to O'Hare Airport together, as a family, like we always did. Tom was heading to Seattle for a 3-day conference on software innovations. He hugged Jake tightly, telling him to be good and help Mom around the house. Then he turned to me, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "I'll miss you both. Call me when you get home safe." His suitcase rolled behind him as he walked through security, waving one last time before disappearing into the crowd. Jake and I stood there for a moment, watching the planes taxi on the runway through the big windows. "Come on, buddy," I said, ruffling his hair. "Let's grab some ice cream on the way home to celebrate the weekend." But as we walked back to the parking garage, Jake was unusually quiet. He's always been a thoughtful kid, loves reading mystery books and building model airplanes, but that silence felt different. We got into the car, a reliable old SUV we'd had for years, and I started the engine. The radio played some classic rock, and I hummed along, trying to lighten the mood. "What flavor ice cream are you thinking? Chocolate chip cookie dough, like always?" I asked, glancing at him in the rearview mirror. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he fidgeted with his seatbelt, staring out the window at the passing traffic. Finally, as we merged onto the highway, he leaned forward and whispered, "Mom, can we not go home right now? I heard Dad saying something this morning, something about us." My heart skipped a beat. I turned down the radio. "What do you mean, Jake? What did he hear?" He looked nervous, his blue eyes wide like when he was little and afraid of thunderstorms. "I was up early, before you guys woke up. I couldn't sleep because I was excited about the science fair project. I went downstairs to get a glass of water, and I heard Dad on the phone in his office. The door was cracked open a bit. He was talking low, like he didn't want anyone to hear." I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my mind racing. Tom had been up late last night, packing and making calls. I'd assumed it was work-related. "All right, honey, tell me exactly what he said." He swallowed hard. He said something like, "Everything's set. They'll never see it coming. Make sure it's ready by tonight. I don't want any loose ends with Emily and Jake." Then he laughed, but it wasn't his nice laugh. It sounded mean. And he said, "This will take care of them for good." "Mom, I think he's planning something bad against us." I felt a chill run down my spine. This couldn't be right. Tom was a good man, reliable, kind, the type who volunteered at Jake's school events and surprised me with flowers on random Tuesdays. But Jake wasn't one to make things up. He had an honest streak a mile wide. "Are you sure that's what you heard? Maybe it was about work, like a deal or something." He shook his head firmly. "No, he said our names, Mom. Emily and Jake, and he sounded serious. What if he's mad about something? Remember last week when you argued about the vacation plans?" I did remember. Tom and I had a disagreement about where to go for our family trip. He wanted Florida, beaches. I preferred a quiet cabin in the mountains. It wasn't a big fight, just normal couple stuff. But now, in light of what Jake said, my mind started spinning worst-case scenarios. What if there was more to it? Tom had been distant lately, buried in his phone more than usual. I'd chalked it up to stress from work, but maybe... "All right," I said, trying to keep my voice steady for his sake. "We won't go straight home. Let's think this through." I took the next exit off the highway, heading toward a nearby mall instead. It was a place we knew well, crowded, safe, with plenty of spots to sit and talk. As I parked, I pulled out my phone and texted Tom, made it back to the car safely. Love you. His reply came almost immediately. Good. Love you too. Boarding now. Nothing suspicious there, but my stomach was in knots. We found a bench inside the mall near the food court where the smells of pretzels and pizza filled the air. Jake munched on a soft pretzel I'd bought him, but his appetite was gone after a few bites. "What do we do now, Mom?" he asked, his voice small. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. First, we need to figure out if this is a misunderstanding. But until we know, we play it safe. Maybe we can stay at Aunt Sarah's tonight? She's only an hour away, and she won't mind. Aunt Sarah was my sister, living in a cozy apartment in Milwaukee. She was single, worked as a teacher, and always had a spare room for us. Jake nodded, but then his eyes lit up with an idea. Or what if we hide and watch the house, like in those detective shows, see if anyone shows up or something? I hesitated. It sounded risky, but part of me wanted answers too. Okay, but we have to be careful. No getting too close, and if anything feels off, we leave immediately. We spent the next hour at the mall, pretending to shop, while I called Sarah to let her know we might visit. Just a spontaneous trip, I told her, not wanting to worry her yet. Then, as the afternoon wore on, we drove back toward home but parked a block away in the cul-de-sac behind our neighbor's fence. Our house was a 2-story colonial with white siding and a big oak tree in the front yard. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. From our spot, we could see the driveway and front door without being obvious. Hours ticked by. Jake and I took turns watching, eating snacks from the glove compartment and playing word games to pass the time. "I spy something blue," he said, pointing to a car passing by. "The sky?" I guessed. "Nope, that mailbox." We laughed softly, but tension hung in the air. Around dusk, as the streetlights flickered on, a van pulled up to our driveway. It was plain white, no markings, and 2 men in dark clothes got out. My pulse quickened. "Jake, get down," I whispered. They approached the house, glancing around, before one of them used a key and opened the front door. "Jake, they're going inside," he hissed. I watched in disbelief as they entered our home, the door closing behind them. What was happening? Was this what Tom had planned? My mind raced. Burglary? Something worse? I grabbed my phone to call the police, but hesitated. What if it was a setup? What if Tom was involved? We waited, hearts pounding, as minutes turned into an hour. Lights flicked on inside, first the living room, then upstairs. Shadows moved behind the curtains. Jake clutched my arm. "What do we do?" "Stay put," I said. "Let's see what they do next." Finally, the men emerged, carrying boxes. They loaded them into the van and drove off. Our house went dark again. I felt a mix of fear and confusion. Okay, that's it. We're not going in there tonight. To Aunt Sarah's we go. As we drove away, Jake looked back. "Mom, what do you think is really going on?" "I don't know, sweetie, but we're going to find out." Little did I know, the surprises were just beginning, and what we'd uncover next would shake me to my core. We arrived at Aunt Sarah's apartment in Milwaukee just after 9 that evening. The city lights reflected off Lake Michigan as we crossed the bridge, but I barely noticed. My hands were still shaking on the wheel. Sarah met us at the door in her favorite oversized sweater, hair in a messy bun, clearly surprised but happy to see us. "Emily? Jake? What in the world? Did something happen?" she asked, pulling us both into a hug before we could answer. I gave her the short version. Tom left for his trip. Jake overheard something strange. We decided to play it safe and not go home tonight. I left out the part about the 2 men with keys and the boxes. I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. It felt too real, too dangerous. Sarah didn't push. She just nodded, made hot chocolate, and set up the guest room with extra blankets. Jake fell asleep almost immediately on the pull-out couch, exhausted from the tension of the day. I sat with Sarah at her small kitchen table, staring into my mug. "Okay," she said quietly. "Tell me the part you didn't say in front of Jake." I took a deep breath, and explained everything. Jake's exact words from the office, the men entering our house with a key, the boxes they carried out. Sarah listened without interrupting, her teacher face on, calm, focused, analyzing. When I finished, she leaned back. First question, did you recognize either of the men? No, they were too far, wearing dark hoodies. Average height, nothing special. Second, did Tom ever mention giving a spare key to anyone? Plumber, electrician, cleaning service? I shook my head. We only have one extra key, and it's in the kitchen drawer, unless he made copies without telling me. Sarah frowned. Third question, and don't get mad. Could Jake have misunderstood what he heard? Kids sometimes fill in blanks. I asked myself the same thing 100 times today, I admitted. But he repeated the exact phrases, word for word, and he's not the type to exaggerate for attention. If anything, he's too serious sometimes. We sat in silence for a minute. Then Sarah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Tomorrow morning, first thing, we go back. Not to the house yet, but we need more information. You're not going in blind. I nodded, grateful she didn't try to talk me into calling the police right away. I wasn't sure what I'd even tell them. My husband left on a business trip and 2 strangers used a key to take boxes from our house? It sounded like a bad movie script. Before bed, I checked my phone. Tom had texted twice more. Plane landed, conference hotel is nice, miss you already. And later, everything okay at home? You haven't sent any pics of Jake yet. My stomach twisted. I typed back, all good, Jake's asleep early. Talk tomorrow, safe travels. I hit send and immediately felt guilty for lying. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those men walking into our house like they belonged there. The next morning, Saturday, Sarah made pancakes while Jake and I planned our next move over breakfast. He was quieter than usual, but determined. I think we should check Dad's office, he said, cutting his pancake into perfect squares. He always locks the bottom drawer. Maybe there's something in there. Sarah raised an eyebrow. You're suggesting breaking into your own house? Not breaking, Jake corrected. We have the garage remote. We can go in quietly, look around, and leave before anyone knows. I hated how sensible it sounded coming from a 12-year-old. We decided on a compromise. Sarah would stay with the car a block away, ready to drive if needed. Jake and I would go in through the back door, less visible from the street, spend no more than 10 minutes inside, and only check the office. If anything felt wrong, we'd leave immediately. Around 11 o'clock, we drove back toward our neighborhood. The closer we got, the tighter my chest felt. Our street looked peaceful, kids riding bikes, someone mowing a lawn, normal Saturday sounds. But our house felt different now, like it was watching us. We parked 2 streets over and walked the last block, trying to look casual. Jake held my hand the whole way, something he hadn't done since he was 8. The back gate was still latched. I opened it slowly, wincing at the tiny squeak. The backyard looked untouched. Jake's basketball hoop, the patio set, the flower beds I'd planted last spring, everything normal. Too normal. I unlocked the back door with the spare key hidden under a fake rock. The house smelled like it always did. Coffee, laundry detergent, and a hint of Tom's cologne. My heart ached for a second. This was still our home, wasn't it? We slipped inside. Jake went straight for the stairs. I followed, checking every room as we passed. Living room, normal. Kitchen, normal. Nothing obviously missing. Upstairs, Tom's office door was closed. He always kept it that way when he was working. I turned the knob. Locked. Jake looked at me. Do you know where he keeps the key? I thought for a second. Top drawer of his dresser. He's terrible at hiding things. We moved to the bedroom. The bed was made exactly the way Tom always left it. Hospital corners, pillows fluffed. I opened the dresser drawer and found the small brass key taped to the underside of a sock organizer. Typical Tom. Back in the office, the key timed smoothly. The room looked the same as always: desk, filing cabinet, bookshelf with business books, and a few framed photos of the three of us. But something felt off. Jake went straight for the bottom drawer of the desk, the one Tom always kept locked. He tugged. It opened easily. No lock, no resistance. Inside were the usual things: old passports, birth certificates, our marriage license. And then, underneath a stack of papers, a plain manila envelope. I pulled it out. No label, just sealed with clear tape. Jake watched me. Open it? My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. Inside were bank statements, accounts I'd never seen before. One was in Tom's name only, another joint with Laura Bennett. Transfers of thousands of dollars over the past 18 months, regular deposits, regular withdrawals. My knees went weak. I sank into Tom's chair. Jake looked over my shoulder. "Who's Laura Bennett?" "I have no idea," I whispered. There were more papers: a lease agreement for an apartment in downtown Chicago, signed by Tom and Laura Bennett, dated 6 months ago. Photos. Printed screenshots from a phone of a stylish loft, a woman's silhouette in the kitchen, Tom laughing on a couch I didn't recognize. And then the worst part: a printed email chain. From Tom to Laura. Subject: final arrangements. "Everything is in motion. The house will be empty this weekend. They'll be gone by Sunday night. I've arranged the pickup. After that, we start fresh. Just you and me. No more pretending." My vision blurred. I couldn't breathe. Jake's voice sounded far away. "Mom? What does it mean?" Before I could answer, we heard the sound that turned my blood to ice. The front door opened. Someone was coming into the house. The sound of the front door opening echoed through the quiet house like a gunshot. Jake froze beside me, eyes wide. I grabbed his wrist and pulled him down behind the desk. We crouched low, barely breathing. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. Someone wearing hard-soled shoes. Click, 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 across the hardwood floor of the foyer. I pressed a finger to my lips. Jake nodded, lips pressed tight. The footsteps paused at the bottom of the stairs. Then a woman's voice, soft but clear, drifted up. "Tom, you here already? I thought your flight was delayed." My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack them. Laura Bennett. She was here, in our house, calling for my husband like she belonged. Another set of footsteps, lighter, probably hers, moved toward the kitchen. Cabinets opened, closed. The refrigerator door hummed open. "Strange," she muttered to herself. "I thought they'd have left some food. Oh well." Jake looked at me terrified. I mouthed, "Stay quiet." I risked a tiny peek around the edge of the desk. From this angle I could see down the hallway, just a sliver. A woman stood in the kitchen doorway, mid-30s, dark hair pulled into a neat ponytail, wearing a cream-colored coat and black boots. She looked ordinary, pretty in a polished way, the kind of woman who always knows which lipstick shade matches her scarf. She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, put it to her ear. "Hey, it's me," she said after a moment. "I'm at the house. They're definitely not here. The place feels empty." "Yeah, I'll start packing the rest of the personal stuff. The movers already took the big boxes yesterday, right?" "Perfect. See you Sunday night at the apartment. Love you." She hung up. "Love you." She said it to my husband. I felt something inside me crack. Not break, just crack, like thin ice under too much weight. Jake's hand found mine and squeezed, hard. The woman, Laura, walked back toward the foyer. For one horrible second, I thought she would come upstairs, but instead, she opened the coat closet, pulled out a small rolling suitcase that had been tucked inside, and began moving through the living room, picking up framed photos: our wedding picture, Jake's kindergarten graduation, the three of us at the Grand Canyon 2 summers ago. She studied each one, then placed them carefully into the suitcase, not smashing them, not throwing them away, packing them like keepsakes. My confusion grew sharper than my fear. Why would she want our photos? She disappeared into the dining room. I heard drawers opening, silverware clinking. Jake whispered, so quiet I barely heard, "Mom, we have to get out." I nodded, but now I was torn. Part of me wanted to run. The bigger part, the part that had raised a child with this man, built a life, trusted, needed answers. I made the decision in a heartbeat. Stay right here. Do not move. If anything happens, go out the window onto the roof over the porch and run to Aunt Sarah's car. Promise me. He shook his head furiously. I'm not leaving you. Jake, promise. Tears welled in his eyes, but he nodded once. I crept out from behind a desk, keeping low, and slipped into the hallway. The carpet muffled my steps. I moved toward the stairs, then changed my mind and went the other way, toward the guest bedroom at the end of the hall. From there, I could circle back down the back staircase into the kitchen. My plan was simple and stupid. Get close enough to see her face clearly, maybe hear more of the conversation if she made another call, then slip out the back door before she noticed. I made it to the guest room doorway when I heard her voice again, closer now. She was coming up the main stairs. I ducked into the guest room, pressed myself against the wall beside the door. My pulse thundered in my ears. Her footsteps reached the landing. She paused. Then, "Tom, is that you?" She must have seen the office door standing open. I held my breath. She walked past the guest room, didn't look inside, and went straight into the office. I waited 3 heartbeats, then slipped out down the back staircase as quietly as I could. I reached the kitchen. The back door was 10 feet away, but something on the counter stopped me cold. A stack of papers, a thick envelope, and on top, divorce papers. My name, Tom's name, filed 3 weeks ago. Grounds, irreconcilable differences. I stared at the signature line. My own signature stared back at me, except I'd never seen these papers, never signed them. The forgery was good, very good. My hands shook so badly the papers rattled. Then I heard Laura's voice from upstairs, louder now, talking on the phone again. "Yeah, I'm looking at it now. The office door was already open. Wait, there's something missing." A pause. "The envelope with the new passports, it's gone." My blood turned to ice. New passports. I looked down at my own hands. In my rush earlier, I had shoved the manila envelope, the one with the bank statements, the lease, the email, into the front pocket of my hoodie. I hadn't even realized I still had it. Laura's footsteps pounded back toward the stairs. "She must have come back," she said into the phone, voice sharp with sudden alarm. "They're here, somewhere." I bolted. I flew out the back door, across the patio, through the gate. I didn't stop to look back. Jake met me halfway across the neighbor's yard. He had disobeyed and climbed out the office window after all. We ran together, hand in hand, lungs burning, until we reached Aunt Sarah's car 2 streets over. She had the engine running. "Get in," she hissed. We dove into the back seat. Sarah peeled away from the curb without waiting for seatbelts. Jake was crying silently. I pulled him against me, both of us shaking. Sarah glanced at us in the rearview mirror. "What happened?" I held up the envelope. "Tom's been planning to disappear. New life, new woman, new passports, and he forged my signature on divorce papers." Sarah's knuckles went white on the wheel. "Where to now?" she asked. I looked at Jake. His face was pale, but his jaw was set. "Police," I said. "We're done hiding." But as I said it, a terrible new thought wormed its way into my mind. If Tom had planned everything this carefully, what if the police were already part of it? Sarah drove us straight to the nearest police station in the next suburb over, not our local one. I didn't trust anything close to home anymore. The building was a low brick structure with 2 bright fluorescent lights and the smell of old coffee. We waited almost 40 minutes before a detective named Ramirez finally called us into a small interview room. He was in his late 40s, tired eyes, graying at the temples, the kind of man who'd probably seen every version of family betrayal there is. He listened without interrupting while I told the whole story, from Jake overhearing the phone call, to the men with boxes, to finding the forged divorce papers and Laura Bennett standing in our kitchen packing our family photos. I laid everything on the table, The manila envelope, the bank statements, the lease agreement, the printed email chain, even the fake signature on the divorce petition. Jake sat beside me, clutching a paper cup of water he hadn't touched. Detective Ramirez flipped through the documents slowly, eyebrows climbing higher with each page. Finally, he looked up. "Mrs. Carter, this is a lot. On the surface, it looks like your husband is planning to leave the country with another woman and drain joint accounts. The forged signature on the divorce filing is a serious felony by itself, but we need to verify a few things." He asked for permission to make copies. I said yes. Then he stepped out to speak with a colleague. Jake leaned against my shoulder. "Are we in trouble now?" "No, honey, we're the ones reporting a crime. That's the opposite of trouble." But inside, I wasn't so sure. Every time the door opened, I expected Tom to walk in, calm and reasonable, explaining how it was all a misunderstanding. Or worse, Laura, with that polished smile, claiming I was the unstable one. Ramirez returned with another detective, a woman named Harper. She had short, dark hair and a no-nonsense voice. "We ran the name Laura Bennett through the system," she said. "No criminal record. But we did find something interesting. There's a Laura Bennett, age 34, listed as living at the same downtown Chicago address that appears on your lease agreement. She works as a marketing consultant, freelance mostly. No marriage record, no kids, clean credit. Nothing jumps out." I swallowed. "So she's real?" "Very real," Ramirez said. "We also pulled your husband's recent travel. He did board the flight to Seattle yesterday. But here's the thing. He booked a return ticket for tomorrow night, red-eye, arrives back in Chicago Sunday morning." My stomach dropped. "He's coming back early?" "Looks that way. The email you found said Sunday night at the apartment. Maybe he's planning to meet her there after he lands." Sarah, who had insisted on staying with us, spoke up for the first time. "So what happens now? Do you arrest him when he lands?" Ramirez shook his head. "Not yet. We don't have enough for an immediate arrest warrant. Forgery is serious. Identity theft elements are there, possible financial crimes, but we need more. We need to catch him in the act or get a confession. Right now, everything you have is circumstantial. Strong, but circumstantial." Harper leaned forward. "We'd like to set up surveillance at the house. If he shows up tomorrow, we can watch what he does. We can also put a freeze on the accounts you mentioned, but that will tip him off. Your call." I looked at Jake. His face was pale, but his eyes were steady. "I want to go home," he said quietly, "but only if the police are there. I don't want to hide anymore." Ramirez nodded slowly. "We can do a soft watch. Plainclothes officers nearby. You and your son can stay in the house tomorrow night. Act normal. If he comes home, we'll be ready to move." It sounded insane, terrifying, but also inevitable. We left the station around 7 that evening. Sarah drove us back to my sister's apartment so we could pack a few things. Jake and I would return home the next day, Sunday, pretending everything was fine. That night, I barely slept again. I kept replaying Laura's voice in our kitchen, the way she'd handled our photos like they were souvenirs. Why take them? Why not destroy them? Around 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Tom. "Landed early. Surprise. Coming home tonight instead. Can't wait to see you both. Love you." My fingers hovered over the screen. I typed back, "That's wonderful. We'll be home waiting. Love you too." I hit send and felt sick. Sunday morning arrived gray and cold. Jake and I drove back to the house in silence. Sarah followed in her own car and parked 2 blocks away as backup. The house looked exactly the same. No broken windows, no signs of disturbance. Inside smelled faintly of the lavender candle I'd burned Thursday night. We moved like ghosts. I straightened pillows. Jake put away dishes. We turned on the TV, kept the volume low. Normal, ordinary, terrifying. Around 4 o'clock, the doorbell rang. My heart stopped. I looked through the peephole. It was Tom. He stood on the porch in his navy coat, suitcase beside him, smiling like he'd just won the lottery. Behind him, in the driveway, sat a rental car I didn't recognize. I opened the door slowly. "Hey, beautiful," he said, stepping forward to hug me. I let him. My body moved on autopilot. His arms felt familiar, too familiar. Jake appeared in the hallway, eyes huge. "Buddy," Tom dropped to one knee and pulled Jake into a hug. "Missed you so much." Jake didn't hug back. He just stood there, stiff. Tom frowned slightly but recovered fast. "Long flight. I'm starving. How about we order pizza and catch up?" I forced a smile. "Sure, that sounds perfect." We went into the kitchen. Tom opened the fridge, pulled out a beer like nothing had changed. I watched him, every movement feeling rehearsed. Then he turned to me. "You okay? You seem quiet." I shrugged. "Just tired. It's been a long weekend." He nodded, took a sip. "I know. I'm sorry I had to go, but good news. The conference went great. Big contract signed. We might actually be able to afford that mountain cabin you wanted." The lie was so smooth it almost hurt. Jake sat at the table, drawing circles on a napkin with his finger. He looked up suddenly. "Dad, who's Laura Bennett?" The room went dead silent. Tom's smile froze. The beer bottle paused halfway to his lips. Then he laughed, short, sharp, forced. "Laura? She's a colleague, marketing director on the new project. Why?" Jake didn't blink. "Because she was here yesterday, in our house, packing our pictures." Tom's face changed in an instant. The warmth vanished. Something colder, harder took its place. He set the bottle down very carefully. "Jake," he said slowly, "I think you're confused." "I'm not. We saw her, and we found the papers, the new passports, the email, everything." Tom looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the moment he realized the game was up. He took one step toward the door. I spoke before I could stop myself. "Don't move, Tom. The police are watching the house." He stopped, looked around like he could see them through the walls. Then he laughed again, this time low, bitter. "You really think you can stop this?" he said quietly. "You have no idea what's coming." And in that moment, with the winter light slanting through the kitchen window, I understood something worse than betrayal. This wasn't about leaving us. This was about erasing us. Tom's words hung in the kitchen air, like smoke after a fire. "You have no idea what's coming." He said it quietly, almost gently, the way you explain something obvious to a child. I felt Jake shift closer to me. His small hand found the back of my sweater and gripped it tight. Tom looked at us both, first Jake, then me, and something in his expression softened for half a second. Regret? Pity? I couldn't tell. Then it vanished. He took a slow step backward toward the hallway. "I didn't want it to end like this," he said. "I really didn't." I found my voice. "Then why? Why all of this? The lies, the new life, the forged papers? Why not just leave? Why erase us?" He stopped at the archway between kitchen and living room. Outside, the last of the winter daylight was dying. Streetlights flickered on one by one. "Because leaving wasn't enough," he answered. "You would have fought. You would have taken half of everything. The house, the accounts, the investments. You would have made sure Jake hated me forever. I couldn't live with that." "So you decided to disappear," I said, the words tasting like ash, "and take everything, and make us think what? That we were in danger? That you were dangerous?" He shrugged, almost apologetically. "Fear makes people run. If you ran, if you disappeared for a while, it would be easier to finish the paperwork quietly. The divorce would go through uncontested. Laura and I could start over, somewhere new. Clean slate." Jake's voice cracked. "You were going to let us think you were dead? Or that you hurt us?" Tom looked at his son, really looked, and for the first time, I saw real pain in his eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you, Jake. That's why I kept putting it off. Every time I tried to finalize it, I couldn't. I kept thinking, maybe next month, maybe after the holidays. But Laura was getting impatient, and the money you've been moving for 18 months, I finished." He nodded once. It wasn't supposed to be this messy. The silence stretched. Then, from the front of the house, came the sound of car doors closing. Quiet, professional. Tom's head snapped toward the living room window. Blue and red lights pulsed faintly against the curtains. He turned back to me. "You really called them. I told you they were watching." He exhaled through his nose, almost a laugh. "You always were smarter than I gave you credit for." Footsteps on the porch. A firm knock. "Mr. Carter, this is Detective Ramirez, Chicago PD. Please open the door." Tom looked at me one last time. He said, "I'm sorry." And I believed him. For the first time in 2 days, I actually believed something he said. He walked to the door himself, opened it. Ramirez and Harper stood there, 2 uniformed officers behind them. No drawn weapons, just calm authority. "Thomas Carter, you're under arrest for forgery, identity theft, financial fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You have the right to remain silent." The words faded into background noise as I pulled Jake away from the doorway, into the kitchen, out of sight. We didn't need to watch. We already knew the ending. The next hours passed in fragments. Tom was handcuffed and led to a squad car. He didn't look back. Ramirez stayed behind to take our full statements. Again, this time on record. Laura Bennett was picked up at the downtown apartment an hour later. She didn't resist. Apparently, she cried the whole way to the station. The bank accounts were frozen that same night. Most of the transferred money was still recoverable. Tom hadn't moved it offshore yet. Small mercy. The new passports were found in a safe deposit box under Laura's name. 2 tickets to Lisbon booked for the following Tuesday. They never made the flight. Aunt Sarah arrived just after midnight with coffee and blankets. She held me when I finally cried. Quiet, ugly sobs that had been waiting since Jake first whispered those words in the car on a highway outside Chicago. Jake fell asleep on the couch with his head in my lap. I stroked his hair and watched the lights of passing cars move across the ceiling. The house felt different now. Not safer, not yet, but emptier, cleaner somehow. The next morning, I woke up early. Sunlight came through the kitchen window in pale winter bars. I made coffee the way I always did, 2 scoops, no sugar, and sat at the table staring at the empty chair across from me. Jake came down in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. "Mom? Yeah, buddy? Is Dad coming back?" I took a slow breath. Not for a long time, and when he does, things will be different. We'll decide together what that looks like, okay? He nodded. Then he walked over and hugged me, hard, like when he was little. I'm glad we didn't go home that first day. Me too. We spent the week packing up Tom's things. Not angrily, not carefully, just methodically. Clothes to donation, papers to the lawyer. The photos of the 3 of us I kept. The ones of just him I put in a box in the garage. I wasn't ready to decide yet. Aunt Sarah helped. Friends from the neighborhood brought casseroles and kind words. Life kept moving, even when it felt impossible. 3 months later, the divorce was final. Real this time. No forgeries, no secrets. Tom took a plea deal. 3 years, minimum security. He writes Jake letters. Jake reads them sometimes. He hasn't written back yet. Laura got probation. She moved out of state. I never saw her again. And us? Jake and I kept the house. We painted the office a bright blue, his favorite color. We turned it into a game room with model airplanes hanging from the ceiling. We go to the mountains now instead of the beach. We hike, we build fires, we talk. Sometimes I catch myself waiting for the sound of Tom's key in the lock. Then I remember, he doesn't have a key anymore, and I need neither one to feel safe. Because the safest place turned out not to be a house. It was the truth, and the boy who was brave enough to whisper it in the back seat of a car on a highway outside Chicago. That whisper saved us, and I'll never stop being grateful for it. Thank you for listening to the whole story. If it touched you, if it reminded you of anything in your own life, trust that small voice inside. Sometimes the quietest words are the ones that matter most. Take care of yourselves, hug the people you love, and if something feels wrong, listen. I'll see you in the next story.